Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today for this first webinar on cognitive conditioning for elite sports performance. I am your humble host, Jean-Christian Andoni from Neurotracker. We're very pleased to have you here today. Do not hesitate to drop in the comments where you're joining us from. Don't hesitate, don't be shy to ask questions. We'll do our best to answer them during the show, and if not, we'll do so after the show. Thank you for joining today on this Neurotracker webinar with a host that doesn't need any introduction, but I will make a small introduction nevertheless after. For those who don't know Neurotracker, we are the most scientifically validated neurotechnology to improve elite performance. We have around more than 500,000 users across 5 continents. Our platform delivers more than 5 million sessions every year. We have 1,000 partners worldwide, and we are very widely spread in the sports vertical. Some of the most famous federations and clubs like Manchester United, PSG, the NHL, NFL are using Neurotracker to increase their athlete performance. If you want to know more, please check our website, neurotrackerx.com, or connect with us after the show. Without further ado, we are so honored and delighted to have Mick Clegg, who doesn't need an introduction, but I will make a short intro and then Mick, you can continue. Mick is a former Man United power development coach from 2000 to 2011. He has trained some of the biggest stars in football history, such as Cristiano Ronaldo and David Beckham. And we are very happy to have you here today. Welcome, Mick.
Hi. Good to be here, and I will try to give you the best of what I've got left over all my years in whatever way you want to continue. So, yeah, good to be here, and great to talk about Neurotracker as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so today we're going to really to approach, I think, one topic that is very keen to you personally, but also professionally. It's cognitive conditioning for elite sports performance. But before we jump into the topic, I'd like to ask you, you have more than 4 decades in coaching experience. Could you give us a quick overview of what has been your journey within the performance in sports? And how have you seen the performance aspect in sport evolution over the years that you've been coaching?
Well, my training, if you like, started by having children. So if you have 2, I've got 5, and 2 of them were footballers from Manchester United, and 2 were weightlifters, been in the World Championships and the European Championships, etc. So seeing their development, you realise that as a child is growing, if that isn't working well, then nothing else works well. But the most important thing is that, and that's the heart, the way they feel about what they want to do, why they want to do, and what they're prepared to put in, to drive the brain to do the things that the body has to do to be actually doing what you want to do. And I've watched that over the years. So I watched my children, and of course, they've all got mates. I had a gym. I was training my children in the gym, and then they brought their mates along. And from then, I ended up going into the schools. And so I ended up working the schools. I did the Manchester Power Development Programs for Manchester schools. After looking at Olympic lifting and athletics, shot put, javelin, discus and sprinting, hurdling, all that sort of stuff, all power related stuff. And you realise that the starting point is actually the heart, what I want to do. And then it drives the brain into understanding what you need to do. And then the body by doing all the different things, whether it's a shot put, a javelin, and lifting or whatever, to get into wherever you want to be. Of course, the development then goes across different sports, but then into different people. So my eldest son, Michael, played for Manchester United, and he actually played for the first team a few times, which was fantastic at the time of Eric Cantona, who most people know about, etc. And what happened with developing Michael was Manchester United actually saw how powerful he was, strong and fast together, but with an ability to see the direction and go in the right direction, which he did. And so from seeing Michael, then they had a look at Stephen, who's 6 years younger. And then he was the same. He was a very, very powerful lad. He was a British weightlifting schoolboy champion 3 years in a row. you know, and it was just amazing because it was a sprinter, it was a javelin thrower, you like rugby and stuff like that. So he was an absolute athletic machine, if you like. And as a dad, you can see where it's coming from. So you go into schools, you go into colleges, you then end up on the scene at Manchester United, and then suddenly you start your apprenticeship again. Because once you see people at the highest level of athleticism, then you start to really understand what's going on and how important the brain is, how important cognition is, how important the right feelings and forces that you're creating to do the job that you want to do. And it's been a fantastic journey. And it's, like I say, it's over 40 years that I've been coaching. So, and I've come across a lot of very interesting athletes, and they're all of them so different, you know, in their approaches and the way they think and feel and what they actually end up doing. So that's basically it. I'm a dad. My kids have friends. They went to school. I worked with the schools, the colleges, and then at Manchester United, I was very lucky enough to, over them years, 2000, 2011, to meet some of the most fantastic athletes in the world.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey with us, Mick. It's very important that we understand that indeed, as you said, everything comes from the heart, and the heart is energy center also in the body, and it connects, the brain and the body as well. So when we do things from the heart with purpose and with intention, then the brain follows, and also the body follows. So indeed, it has been a journey for you with different phases and in different environments. But we'll have a little focus on your time at Man United. You were known as the power development coach, which is not really a term that we are used to hearing in the world of football. So how is that different, for example, from traditional strength and conditioning, which is what we refer to when it comes to more physical type of performance, and when it comes to football coaching? So what is the difference?
Okay, so strength and conditioning is America. It's American
Okay.
football. Okay. I was in football, you know, where you use a ball and you kick it. I was in football in England in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and there was no strength and conditioning in football at the time. So when I came into Manchester United, me and Lee, who you know well from Neurotracker, we developed a power development program for Manchester schools. So I was coaching weightlifting, javelin, shot put, discus, sprints, all the rest. These are power sports. And so I realized straight away it was the brain that's the most important part to start working. Obviously, we talk about the heart and how we motivate and run, but it's the brain that's actually going to, create this movement pattern. And it always had speed. To me, the main thing was speed, but it needed to have strength with it. So you have to have speed in the sports that I was working on, but you needed strength with it. But also you needed direction or skill. So if you put these things together, all the type of athletes I was working with had speed, strength, and direction forces. And that was all power, and it all came from the brain. So I went into Manchester United. There was no strength and conditioning then. Strength and conditioning came in about 2004. I went on to strength and conditioning courses, and it was incredible to listen to their ideas, because it was not for football where you kick a ball with your feet. It came from America, and so it's based on their findings. They bring it over, and then they try to. Well, we have done. They've got it into football, and that's there's the gym for strength and conditioning, and then there's an outfield for football, and that's the way it is. But it was integration to me. It was all about integration of speed, direction, strength, balance, energies to use in the sport. And you needed a high degree of skill if you wanted to get to the high level. So strength and conditioning was very, very minor, really. Of course, there has to be, but it's got to be done in specific ways. And that's what drew me on to, as this strength and conditioning came in, and I could see the difference in the way that I thought. That's when I really thought to myself, especially after meeting Ruud van Nistelrooy, The reason being is Ruud van Nistelrooy, if you people out there know him, he played, he was centre forward at Manchester United, and he scored all his goals apart from one for Manchester United in the 18-yard box. That's very significant because that is the most intense place to play football. Okay, yeah. So he's in there and he's able to pick a spot to hit that ball to score a goal better than anybody else I'd ever seen. Okay, so the way his brain was working and how he was able to make his training be specific to that role of getting in that box and smashing that ball into the net. Okay, so I worked with Ruud for a long time, well, 3.5 years, I think he was there, Ruud, something, or it might have been 5, I can't remember. Well, anyway, I worked with him right from the moment he came in, and we got on really, really well. And so I was able to analyze, I was able to watch him, think about him, talk to him, get feedback from him, all the thoughts and that. And I could see how highly developed his brain was and how he was able to make the right choices and the training that he did to make sure that he was right for playing football. So what happens, strength and conditioning comes in, and it's more about being strong or whatever in the sense of a human being being strong or fit or whatever. But you see, I was looking more specific at football as like a Rio Ferdinand. I mean, I've always said about Rio Ferdinand, what a player that guy was. You know, centre back, okay? So we used to say he could play football smoking a cigar, not that he smoked, and wearing slippers, because his brain was so tuned into what was going on in a football match that he was able to get to the ball without having to put a big tackle in or smash into somebody. You know, that way of thinking, that the brain cognition required to do the things that it did was on another level. And then, you know, so there's a centre back there, then you've a Ruud van Nistelrooy at the front, and then you've got Paul Scholes. Paul Scholes was not an athlete. He was a non-athlete to me. He was not strong. He was not fast. He was not, you know, all these things. But Paul Scholes, in a very small area, was so quick, decisive, and unbelievably able to see directions of the ball coming, players coming, his players going. It was just incredible. And that is way beyond the what strength and conditioning is really trying to do, you know, from back in the day, you know what I mean? So I stuck with my path and developed all these different sorts of training programs that people have enjoyed. But obviously, me in strength and conditioning didn't see it in the same way, and I've never done since, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for telling us all these very interesting stories. All the names that you mentioned, of course, resonate because being a football fan, I remember seeing the games with these different players, and from Van Nistelrooy to Scholes, and it's true that each player is much different in terms of strength, in terms of speed. But if there is, you know, one key area that we can, you know, try to level up for every athlete, every player, is to also train your brain. And once you already have some I would say, dispositions to be able to take a decision fast, to have a good peripheral vision, to be able to really focus on the ball while maintaining awareness around the movements of the players. But the more you train that along with the physical body, the more complete of an athlete you are. And I think this is the approach that you've taken all along your career, and especially in your role, you know, in Manchester United and after that.
That's right, absolutely.
So, you know, you've had, you know, you still have a beautiful coaching career, and you also wrote a book, The Power and the Glory. There is a small piece, good piece by Cristiano Ronaldo. I live in Portugal, so they don't say Cristiano Ronaldo, they just say Cristiano. And he writes about you know, the work he did with you and how it contributed to his development. I remember one year, I mean, you know better, but I remember that seeing him play the first years I arrived at Manchester United, he was, you know, very skinny. He was not really athletic. He was still fast, technical, but he needed more strength, more I would say, more built around his body. And you know, I think you contributed a lot to his development. So from your side, what did you learn from seeing a player like Cristiano, you know, working very diligently and so hard with you, and during the 5 years that you spent with him? What came out? What struck you about the ability of an athlete to develop himself not only physically but also mentally and cognitively?
The reason he did so, or is still doing so well, and I'm really glad about that, is that Cristiano took all the things that were going on in the football world, especially at Carrington, the training ground, and on the football pitch at Old Trafford and other places he played. He took them so seriously. He took them to heart. So the first thing he did when he come to Manchester United, he said to me, he come in and he said, I need you to help me to become, the world's best player, because that's what I'm going to be. And I said, well, I've heard that before, let's see how you do, and he told me about the various people that stood out to him, like Ryan Giggs, who by far was the hardest worker in the gym at the time, and Cristiano studied him. But he also studied everything else that was going on. He wanted to know what was in the gym and what it encompassed to be, as fit and as powerful, using all body parts that you can. But you see, he also needed to speak to the dietitian and the person that's helping with sleep and, what bed he should use. And, so injury prevention was massively important. And guess what? We can look back now and think, yeah, Ryan Giggs played until he was 40. Cristiano Ronaldo was still 41 and playing. They took it really seriously. And injury prevention is a massive part of the development of a footballer when they're in a first team. Because what goes on in the first team, you have to be ready, perfectly ready for the game as soon as it starts. Now, if you're training footballers and they end up aching or overtrained or, lacking in energy or whatever, and it's been left in the gym or out on the football pitch, then you're not doing a good job. But these guys, they knew how to understand what I wanted, what I was thinking. My training was based on coaching kids, do you know what I mean? And seeing them develop. I haven't got masses of qualifications and papers that you could paper the walls with. My main development was watching my children and then their friends and then going into schools. And then suddenly Ryan Giggs pops up and Paul Scholes and all that when I get to United. But I was ready for it because they were just kids to me because I'm an old geezer. Do you know what I mean? So I could listen to them, learn from them. They would always tell me things, which I didn't tell anybody else. That's why I kept myself, in good shape because I weren't running around telling everybody what's going on, which a lot of people like to do. But I didn't do. I stuck with the plan. The kids doing well and becoming adults and dads themselves, doing incredible work. And they were all watching each other very well. It was all watching what I was doing and what, the coaches were doing and, the cook, the dietitian, whatever. They're watchers. They are real watchers, seeing what's going on, because they want the best for themselves. And that's why, to me, they become the best because they took the best of what we had and used it so well. And the one who stands out the most from that point of view, Cristiano Ronaldo, and he's still playing now. Injury prevention and recuperation are massive. Of course, performance training is important, but it's got to be understood properly. It's got to be understood properly. And I don't think it's quite understood as properly as it should be or as well as it should be, even now. So there is a problem that I've seen because I'm not there anymore. People used to say, you must have been really stressed, all the tension in them. There was no tension in the gym because they come in, they do what they needed to do. They knew the tension was going to be out on that pitch performing. So they didn't want to do their training under tension, under stress. You do your stress and get ready for the tension, the stress out on the pitch. And so they were very, very clever people. They're all doing podcasts and stuff like that now. And it's fantastic to hear them because these guys really knew the business, you know what I mean? And they can teach so much. They can't, you listen to Roy Keane and he's so funny, some of the things he says, but there's a truth, a basic truth and an understanding of what went on and what you need to do. And that's why he brought it out, but then he puts a comical tone to it as well, which is fantastic. And I think they must be teaching a lot of people, but possibly more than some of the coaches that run around telling stories. You know what I mean?
Thank you for sharing all these beautiful stories. I mean, you must have so many stories, and watching these athletes, develop themselves not only physically but also mentally and in terms of resilience and building a mindset that's a winning mindset. Because we all know that for example, Cristiano has a winning mindset. He has the mindset to win, and he dedicates 100% of not only his physical strength but also his mental strength to it. And there is not one without the other. You can be as fast, as tactical, as anything as possible, but if you don't have the mental that backs it up, then it's really difficult to achieve your goals. And this is where your brain plays a very crucial role in being a high level athlete, not only in terms of mindset, but using the right tools and putting the right cognitive pathways with your brain in your brain according to the performance goals that you have. And this really takes a lot of course, the proper tools, but also a lot of effort and a lot of coaching. We're going to take a short break to check some of the comments and questions. Thank you all for dropping in the comments. Lee Sadbottom is with us, is also part of the Neurotracker. He is the science whiz in our company. I'll bring him to stage just briefly to say hello and go over the comments. If there's any comments or questions, Lee will go over them right now until we jump to the last part of this webinar. So Lee, anything interesting in the comment section?
I think we should let Mick carry on because he's getting some fascinating territory and the time's running short. So maybe we should just leave it for the Q&A at the end, keep the momentum.
Okay, it's just a small break as we usually do. So thank you, Lee. And we like to say thank you to everyone that's been putting their small comments. One idea that I know is really important to you is knowing when an athlete is ready for more complexity. So, judging the athletes, looking at the athletes' evolution and according to the training schedule that they have, according to the performance goal that they have, how do you judge that, especially in a sport like football, where perception, movement, and decision-making all have to come together to be a really complete player? Where do you think that player is actually able to go to the next level?
This is a really interesting subject because you see, when I was at United, I always did a consultation with all the players. So we sit down. I didn't want your name and address and how heavy you were and all the rest of it. I wanted to know about them. So I used to tell me about themselves. So I used to take down the details. I never shared it to anybody else, but they give me a lot of details about themselves. Now, when they do that, they open up to you. They actually listening to themselves, talking to you, so they understand themselves better. Now, these people, because the top line athletes have really wanted to do well, they then go into the gym, like with me, and do training, see other people doing training. They go and play in massive games, and after that, then they've got another massive game, because football is about a lot of games over a long period of time, and they have a break, and they only have a short break. So they want to make sure they maximize all the effort that they're going to put in. So they will not do work that they don't think is worthwhile. So I'm being checked all the time. Every time I ask somebody to do something, and the most important person to talk to is not the stats guy or the coaches or the manager. The most important person to get the information from is the player. And he will tell you everything that he needs. Now, what you can do with when he's told you what he needs, then you can look at it, the overall profile. You can go and watch them. I mean, look at me. And Sir Alex Ferguson there to go and talk to, you know what I mean? And so really got great coaches with him. So what you do is you listen to the player tell you what they want, and then you just check everything, with the gaffer. Obviously, you always did at United. There's only one gaffer. And then you say, well, I think we should try this, or try that, or try the other. And they will put their effort into what they really believe is going to give them the edge, because that's what they're looking for. They've got to that level, not always doing strength and conditioning, sports science, or power development, or whatever. They've become footballers in far off places and developed and understood themselves for what they do. What you need to do as a coach is allow them to express that. If you're just going in with the computer and saying, this is what we're doing today, guys, it's not going to do the job it should do. What you need to do on an individual level, and so I had 75 players at United that I used to work with. I was the only one in the gym until my son Stephen come working with me. Now there's a coach for every 10 or whatever, but there weren't at the time. So the the fact is I had a gymnasium and I also had kids, you know, I learned how to prioritize time, etc. But the most important thing is listen to the player. And then when he told you what he thinks, then you can analyze, think about it, talk to others even, and then you can get a baseline for saying, oh, shall we try this? What do you think? I don't think you should ever push players into doing something if they're saying they don't want to do it, because that can cause damage. Because like we say, you've got this brain that makes this body work, but you've got this heart that is a reasoning piece of work down there that is telling the brain that this perhaps isn't a good idea for me, or this might be a better idea for me, doing something else. So you should always be looking at the athlete first telling you, and then you put the program around the athlete and make sure it's fitting in line. And then guess what? We've got a great indicator of whether whether they know themselves or not. It's how they perform in training out on the pitch, because it's all about football when we're talking football. Out on the pitch in training, they've got to produce then, and then they go on the big stage and produce then. Now, if they're not doing that, then we can sit down and say, well, you're sure you're right? But very often you'll find that they're right. And you could have come up with all sorts of ideas of what they should do. But unless they see that being something that's going to give them the edge, they won't want to do it. And if they don't want to do it, then you're in trouble. Now, there's others who go too far because they're desperate to play. And that's a bigger test, is where you're saying to people, look, you're going too far. You're doing too much. There's too much in football rather than not enough. Because the stakes are so high, you know, in the likes of Premiership and World Football and all the rest of it. You've got to know your athlete. And if you know your athlete because he knows himself, you're on a winner. If you want to look at data and stats and all this lot and think that you're going to make that work, then I think you're on a loser.
Well, that's really inspiring what you just said, and listening. You know, it's like yourself. If you're an athlete, you always, or even a person, you always need to listen to your own body. Your own body knows the score. It knows exactly what you need. If you take time to sit down and listen to it, then you're able to find the answers of, you know, what type of food you should eat, or if you should drink more water, or if you should get more sleep, what type of exercise is good for you. So as I understand, as a coach, you were very close to the players and very much aware and listening to actually what they feel is good for them in terms of performance development. One other very important topic that I would like to approach as well is how to perform under pressure and the self-confidence level that, you know, professional athletes need to have. So how do you approach this? I would say from, you know, a mindset and a mental exercise type of coaching, not just physically, but how important has it been during your coaching career in prestigious places like Manchester United? And how did you see was the most effective way to strengthen the mental resilience of these football players that often are performing under enormous pressure in important games?
Well, the most important thing is you must give encouragement to the players. If you get on with them really well, we'll tell you things, and you've got to encourage them. But also, you know, sometimes you lose, sometimes you have a bad game, and it's what happens then is when they come and they, well, I tried that, but it didn't work, and now look what's happened. Is how do you help them to overcome things that have gone wrong? Once you start to do that, and I started with these little babies. My wife kept having damn babies, you know what I mean? And so I had to keep, you know, working with them, and they all did quite well. They're all in sport now, years and years on, you know. So you've got to give encouragement to children, but then watch them, and then they'll give you the feedback back, and then you can adjust things for them to go forward. And so all these kids who, they are kids who play at Man United, they've been brought up getting beat, winning, you know, getting hurt, hurting people. So the pressure's there all the time. So you don't have to think, oh, it's a pressure keg and you need some psychologists or something to bring them out of it. All you need to do is the same thing again, as I said before. We have 2 ears and 2 eyes that gives us an understanding, but 1 mouth that does the talking. And, you know, if you look 2, 4, 5, speak a 5th. So you speak to them, give encouragement, then you listen and you watch and see what happens. And they will give you the information back to help you to try and understand them. Now, if somebody's going through a particular problem, like Sir Alex Ferguson, that had to work with people, you know, all sorts of problems in family life, that's a different thing. We're talking about being in Carrington, from my point of view, Carrington Sports Complex. So, okay, so you've got to listen, you've got to learn from them, and you've got to encourage them, and you'll find that the pressure keg, like I said about Ruud van Nistelrooy, he's in the 18-yard box. When is he going to feel really under pressure? There's one time when the ball's not coming in. You're not sending me the ball in. You're not got the balls in the right.
That's the stress level coming up, yeah.
Yeah, that's when they're under pressure. That's when they feel bad. That's when they want to talk and shout. But you know, if they're the ball in there, they'll be onto it. They'll latch onto it. Ruud did all the time. You know what I mean? So the pressures that people talk about, I sometimes think, I'm not sure these people who are taught, who've actually got children, who've coached kids from young, who've actually gone through the process and working with elite athletes. A lot of people talk without knowledge. It's called experiential knowledge. And there's very few people who've got that experiential knowledge. And so they say all things, it sounds great, you know, when they put it online and they use ChatGPT and all this, but have they actually been there? Have they done it? Have they seen it? You know, I'm just a dad who had to cope with my children and then ended up having to cope with other people, and they work hard. You just encourage and listen. And then you add something that may make a difference to them. And that little bit is usually enough. You know, then if you, like I say, you know, you look at Rio, the way that he played the game, you're not going to put him under loads of pressure. He'll be saying to the players on the pitch, I'm under pressure. You need to get here. You need to get there. And you need to get your ass down there. Simple as. So they do it themselves, you know. So I had a great psychologist called Bill Bessick, fantastic guy, who came to Manchester United in the first 2 years that I was there with Steve McLaren. And he was fabulous. But he weren't trying to get them on the couch and see what they work, you know, what goes on in the minds. He was watching what they did, and he taught me lots of things of how to listen and learn from players and how to be effective in the small domain that you have to work with a top athlete.
This is some great information, and it's all about being very much aware of what are the players' conditions and also what is their mindset. And you can tell when a player is on the pitch as in his flow state, when in his environment. And you were talking about Van Nistelrooy, you could tell that whenever this player, the guy was in the box, you know, like he was like a fish in the ocean, basically. But when you saw him in other roles, for example, sometimes you would see that he was a bit disoriented. And this is, you know, why it's very important to have a focused approach when it comes to coaching and training, and not only physically but also mentally. And this is how you've been approaching your coaching, you know, for a big part of your career. Now we're very proud to say that you've been using our platform, Neurotracker, for 16 years now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, you've been one of, you know, the pioneers in spreading the word about what our platform can do for elite performance in football and in other sports and across other verticals as well. You've been training thousands of athletes around the world with Neurotracker. So can you take us back to the beginning, and why did you feel that, you know, it was the right tool for you when you were at Manchester United, and what really triggered to say, oh wow, this tool is the tool that we need to improve cognitive brain function and elite performance in Manchester United?
Okay, so while I was at Manchester United, I'm working with all these players. I can see what is going on, the dynamics of play, the dynamics of being in the gym training, etc. And what I remember waking up one night and thinking this word, two words: rapid cognition, rapid cognition, rapid cognition. It wouldn't leave me. It was like haunted. And I thought, what? That's what I'm getting from these players: rapid cognition, and they want to be better. So what I did, I told you before, I did this power development program for Manchester schools back in the 80s. And I used Lee Sidebottom, who's still at Neurotracker now, he's behind the door somewhere. Okay, and I said to Lee, Lee, I need a tool that I could see a form of rapid cognition being used in some kind of exercise form, but with an ability to say whether if there's improvement. So I knew that Lee was always on the internet. He was always studying. He was always looking for things, and he set off. And then one day he come back and he said, "Mick, I think we got this thing." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Oh, I think he called it. What was it? I can't think what it's called actually, but it was 3D." 3D brain cognition work. Can't remember what the name was at the time. But anyway, so Lee said to me, it's being used in Montreal University by a guy called Jocelyn Forbert. Okay, he said, and this is where you're going to, cave training it was called, cave training. It's not a cave anymore, so that's why I leave. But it was called cave training at that time. So I saw Alex Ferguson and said, look, I want to do this project. Can I go to Montreal and meet this guy, Jocelyn Forbert? He said, yeah, go and, tell us what you find. Because Alex Ferguson said to me, I've got to be very careful. That's why he brought sports science and strength and conditioning on top of everything, his football coaches and his masseurs. Masseurs were massive to him, but he had a big, wide range of understanding of what was required. And he said, go and find, because I don't want to be considered a dinosaur. These are his exact words. I don't want to be considered a dinosaur as these other clubs get these things that they come out with. And I'm not up with the business. So you get out there with the other people and go and find out what there is. And so I went to Montreal University and I spent about a week it was with Jocelyn, and he showed me cave training and other types of training with a young lad down there. And it was absolutely fabulous. And it's from Lee finding it that we then made some kind of deal with taking this thing that was down in the lab back over to Manchester United. So it was massive for them. It was massive for me because I finally got a tool that I can show makes the brain be used at a much higher level, and you can actually see whether people are improving. So we took it to Manchester United and we had tests. And I mean, the great thing was I was working with, all these great players, from 2006, I think it came in, something like that. And I was working with all the players at the time, and I was finding out cognitively what it was like, peripheral vision, all these things, We always had BATACs and speed reaction machines and all that. Not as good as they are now. There's better ones now, but Neurotracker stayed the distance. It's it's still there, and it's still very, very useful. And it comes from Lee Seibold. If he hadn't told me about it, I hadn't had the opportunity. So Alex Ferguson and said, bring it in there. He loved it. He was in a cave. You had to go in this place, or this is special door to go in this place where other people can't be while you're doing it all that. You had somebody at a computer, and it looks fantastic. Three-dimensional was back in them days. Was unusual, so it was great. It caused a stir at Manchester United, and we ended up winning the European Cup, I think, in Moscow.
Oh, thank you for sharing the story. Definitely. So Lee, what you mentioned is 3D multiple object tracking, which is what the Neurotracker exercise is like. But we'll encourage you to go and visit our website, neurotrackerx.com, for more information, or connect with us after the show if you're interested in knowing more. So if we look at the current state of elite performance, and when it comes to the correlation of cognitive training and assessment versus elite performance, what do you think is the future when it comes to coaching into that direction of really combining the cognitive performance of the brain with athletic performance? Where do you think is the next frontier?
The big frontier now is very simple. It's called transition. It's transitioning what you're doing in training out on the pitch. Now, we have no problem with football. We can see that transition there. They play football, each manager, coach, whatever, he has his own way. And then they live by the sword. If it works, then they win. If it doesn't, you're sacked, So it's ruthless, like the sword. But You see, what we haven't got yet is the right form of training that transitions the body to be able to do all the different things that go on in football. There's so many different transitions for running, from coming back and going sideways, change direction, speed, watching a ball as you're running. You know, it's very complicated, but it's actually not. It's uncomplicated because it's one thing. I call my dog T, just T, because it's dead simple for him. You know, when I say T, oh, it's me, that's me. Yeah. One item, T, and then you add a dog biscuit. Or you take one exercise, then you add another, and you watch the transition from one to the other. And then add another one, transition to transition to transition. And every one of these transitions, and I use about 150 different exercises, where you go from one exercise to another, to another, to another, to another, that looks in its way similar to football. I always have a football in my training. Absolutely. I see people doing these 150 kilo trap bar deadlifts and stuff like that. If you want to ruin people, and it is happening, there's a lot of people being ruined in football through doing too heavy weights. I could go on for hours about this, one of you wants me to, but that's not what it's about. What it's about is finding the right exercises and seeing that they transition from one to the other that makes you a footballer. Most important thing in football is scoring goals. How are we going to get there? Well, we need this, we need that, we need the other. Let's put them all together and we transition like a river flowing. With all the things that's in the river, there's the fish, but there's the food for the fish, there's the boats on top, there's the crabs underneath, whatever. But you need the transition right through a flow that is meaningful to football. That's not American football. I'm not talking about American football. It's a different thing. Football where you kick the ball and it is a ball. It's completely different. When you see that working and everybody, all 11 players are looking towards getting that ball at some time and doing something with it, where in other games, they don't even get the ball or whatever it is. So you all work together to think about getting that ball in the back of that net because you scored a goal and then you can win. You can't win without scoring a goal. So it's got to be that. The second thing is stopping them scoring so they can't win. But if you get that mindset and the whole team together are working to that, you see all the different things that they need to do on the pitch, all the different exercise and movements, thinking, reacting, feeling, all these things together, flowing as a river. It's beautiful. And we got that in Manchester United in them days. And it didn't just come from the players, it come from Alex Ferguson, who brought these people in. At the end of the day, he picked them, he put them on there because he knew what they were like, and he had a fantastic team about him. Do you know what I mean? He had coaches who do this, coaches who do that, and everything to come together. So it's a flow like a river, everything transitioning together to get to where you want to need it to be. And for me, from the brain point of view, the Neurotracker is a perfect tool to have in that environment.
Thank you for that. Yeah, in order to centralize everything, in order to really be able to perform at all level, it all starts, of course, with the brain. When your brain performs well, when the pathways are well aligned, when you are training your brain like you're training your body, then you become a complete athlete that's not only capable of taking fast decisions, being focused, but also being able to, perform under pressure and become the best version of yourself that you can be, not only as an athlete, but also as a person. And this is what we do at Neurotracker. Well, it's been an amazing discussion. I think we could speak for hours, especially you. You have a wealth of knowledge and, of course, of experiences that is unlike everyone in the sports in coaching, especially when it comes to cognitive abilities and cognitive training. We will bring Lee on stage to maybe answer, to check the questions that we have from the people that are attending today, and see how we can bring the answers to the different questions. Lee?
Yeah, we have a question that I think will resonate very well, Mick. How do you deal with criticism for dealing or implementing something new?
What, me personally, or the players?
Oh, you could give advice. So you're implementing something new and you're getting resistance and criticism. What do you think is the best strategy to deal with it?
Well, I think the best strategy is if you think it's a good strategy and you've seen it work, then what you do is you implement it. If somebody says, well, I don't agree, well, then they need to prove that it isn't. It's as simple as that, and so if somebody's got good ideas, no, look, you crazy old bloke, you're doing this, but you're not doing that, and it's wrong what you're doing. But unless they can say that, I'll carry on as long as the people I'm coaching want to use it. If they don't want to use it, then you don't use it, because the players will tell you, because they only have a certain amount of energy to spare for anything else on top of what they're doing. And if they want to use it, let them use it, unless you can see reasons. Like I go on and on about this trap bar deadlift with heavy weights on. It's causing so much damage. So that should stop. There should be a law not allowing that, because it filters down, you see, into schools, into football clubs, where they haven't got the knowledge. This heavy weightlifting for footballers, that's people kicking the ball with the feet. It's not about being really, really strong. The strongest thing in a house is the wall. It's very, very strong, but it can't move. Footballers need to move, so they don't need all that weight. Let's get transitions from speed and power and direction that are meaningful for football. So I answer like that. Show me if it's wrong. Tell me, show me.
Sounds like good advice, yeah. Be more assertive, I guess. One other question, we've gone very long on time because it's been such fascinating. It's like watching a movie or something. It's just so entertaining. But loose, I'll paraphrase it, but loose the question is about how much sort of cognitive training do you kind of need to balance into your overall training regime to have a sort of an effective balance? It's a difficult question because I guess you've learned a lot of exercise, but you combine both.
Exactly, that's the thing. If you watch players, you can see how much they're using that cognitive. That's a great thing about Lee. Go and find me something that we can do, because you can see how much is going on in the types of training that they really like doing. But then you do want to have a look at it, isolate it, like we do with a lot of exercises, especially for injury prevention and recuperation. But what you want to do is have some times where you're actually just focusing on brain cognition training. And I would say if they did 5 to 10 minutes a day, to do that sort of work, they would make a hell of a lot of progress.
Yeah, that's where it kind of gets interesting. I think a lot of coaches don't realize, just to sort of wrap up the session, that actually, physiological training is effective, but actually, neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, they're much more efficient adaptation mechanisms. So actually, even doing 5 to 6 minutes a day can be sort of the equivalent sometimes of doing 1 to 2 hours of physical training in terms of getting the functional benefits. So that's very interesting. You've got that perspective.
Great. Well, I don't think we have much more time for any other questions, but don't hesitate to drop again the questions. We'll make sure to connect with you after the show. Mick, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. It's we're very privileged to have this coming from you, and that you spend the time to give us all this beautiful insight and experiences regarding your career, regarding your use of Neurotracker, and regarding what you think is the future of performance coaching. Thank you. And of course, we stay in touch as usual also, because I know you're in close communication with Lee often, since you started the journey with Lee, the Neurotracker journey with Lee, and you're continuing. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone that joined us today. For those who couldn't make it and are watching the replay, feel free to contact with us if you want to know more about what Neurotracker can do for your either club, federation, or organization when it comes to cognitive training and assessment. We'll be pleased to jump on the call and give you more insight on how we help and continue helping tens of thousands of athletes across the world to perform better in their sports and daily life. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, Mick.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.